Hi there, I'm Micheline Maylor, and I'm here today to read from The Bad Wife. It is a first-hand account of how to ruin a marriage, and this is Turnstone reading series, and I've been invited by Sarah Ens. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to read 2 poems out of the collection, starting now. No matter the shape of things, you are much missed. From the room inside, gray mountains, stubborn as a steely cough, a rigid, unrelenting stoop of an unapproving brow, a dirty look from Mother Nature. The spring heron stands tall on stones, an early morning dealer of the good stuff, a bone soothed from an inside pocket. He's got a rattle stop, a throat scuffle cough drop. The sun tips its brim, eye bright, the mountain's crest under new light. Grain spills across the tracks for the spring bear called the boss. Magpies glitter over ice, sky oil thick as untapped pipelines. This stifling monochrome. I miss bow-legged surety, cornflower and auburn fields, yesterday morning certain of its own future. In Hindi, there's a legend of a sparrow who erodes a mountain by dragging a silk scarf across its peak for 100 million years. I think of you, us. Nothing solid can withstand that small relentlessness. Thank you. And the second poem is titled Inclement Weather. Have you seen the sky turn on a rocky cliff face, cobalt silk morph to dappled gray hide? Seen the sky muddle beyond metaphor? Remember, I loved you spectacularly. From the time I spied you mowing the lawn in your underwear to another time, your body slipped in the air, turned and sprung off the edge of our vacation boat. Backflips for the children's circus tricks, turns of impatience and longing, while ours sat peacefully across inhabited rooms, CBC droning in the speakers, the news almost the same as yesterday. So samey is the turning of the world, so full of human nature churning. Those days smutched to years spread soft and green grass. Let's not forget none of it was a waste. Let's not forget the mercury moodiness of weather over the slim sliced schist jammed sidelong into the continent. Our marriage was here for the millennia of our lives. It too has a drift, a motion told in geologic time, a fault line. I have felt the color of your mood in my breast. The way you despise me now tramples down the highway, punches hooves into my chest. But I have not forgotten your beauty, or the lilies you found at Safeway late on Mother's Day, the sun-bleached glacial tint of your eyes, the talks we hushed in the bathroom, private and loving, while our children slept in night-dimmed rooms hallways away. Safe then from me, from us. There is much to mourn and even much more to say, but now silence needs a length of time, the forge of memory. And I have not forgotten the way the clouds here scud off mountain tops and shift a whole sky, the same way tides scramble oceans. You will never be wrong in our children's DNA. We will have all of time to sit in those cells patiently together, all the stories of our past still in synchronicity. Let those remembrances be balm enough for what has become of our bombed-out home, empty of my things and the rhythms we kept. Tell your son you loved me. Keep once inside. All the sky is still in motion. Did you see the weather shift? Even now, thunderheads might. They might break into blue. Thank you, and thank you, Turnstone Press, The book is available at the University of Alberta website and all of your local bookshops. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.
Hello, my name is Tom Wayman, and I was very, very much pleased to be asked to be part of the celebration of Turnstone Press's 45th anniversary. As you know, Turnstone began in 1976, and a couple of years later, I was in Winnipeg giving a reading, and some of the original founders asked me if I had anything that they might be interested in publishing. So the following year, 1979, they came out with a chapbook of 2 long poems by me, and the chapbook is called A Planet Mostly Sea. And I'll be reading from this in just a minute, but 28 years after A Planet Mostly Sea, Turnstone brought out a book of 4 novellas of mine called A Vain Thing. And I think of all the fiction I've published, I'm most proud of A Vain Thing. The vanity that the book talks about has to do with how racism or not liking immigrants or thinking altogether too highly of ourselves are all kind of variations of vanity. And one of the stories in here that I'm particularly proud of is, remember, this is 2007, the book comes out, so it's before Trump, it's before Maxime Bernier, but one of the stories imagines a very charismatic leader of a quite racist political party in British Columbia. So in hindsight, it seems very prescient. The book starts with a little, almost like a little prose poem, thinking about vanity. Vanity is an old song, one of humanity's most ancient. Species, race, nation, our own personal attributes, and our creative and other endeavors can be construed to be evidence of our individual importance, attractiveness, fitness to control others, and decree truths. Despite ours being a planet of competing vanities, each with its accompanying delusions, art gets constructed, love flourishes and sometimes triumphs, societies more or less function. The wonder of it is what I mean these tales to convey. But the excerpts from these long poems I'm going to read are from A Planet Mostly Sea. The first of the 2 long poems here is called Asphalt Hours, Asphalt Air, and it was my attempt to rewrite T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. When I was an undergraduate student at the University of BC, T.S. Eliot, in the English department anyway, was more or less God, because he not only had written all these, what we've now called theoretical pieces, but in those days were called criticism, that was much revered by our professors, but unlike the postmodern theorists now, like Derrida and so on, Eliot himself was an extremely accomplished writer, and The Wasteland was one of his central pieces that we had to study in great detail. So for much of the early part of my writing career, The Wasteland kind of hovered over everything I did. And finally, I spent a couple of years in the Detroit-Windsor area. In 1975-76, I was writer-in-residence at the University of Windsor. The following year, I taught across the river in Detroit at Wayne State University, taught English. And it seemed to me that that was a better location for The Wasteland, that world of heavy industry, than Eliot had written. Eliot wrote The Wasteland out of a kind of personal malaise, and because the poem came out in the 1920s, a kind of societal malaise, post-World War I, when nothing seemed to work, no values seemed honored, and so on. Whereas my poem stays pretty tightly focused on the lives of the people making a living in and around Windsor. So Eliot's poem has 5 sections, so mine does too. In the middle of Eliot's poem, in the 4th of the 5 sections, he suddenly steps away from the kind of collage that he's been building of things not going well. And he just gives you a very short poem about a Phoenician merchant who has drowned. And he does that as a kind of memento mori. That is, we're all going to die, and so how we live our life, what values we espouse is important. In my poem, the fourth section steps away from that kind of fabric of people's lives and the fabric of the environments in which they work and live, to just give a picture of how in the Windsor-Detroit area, it's an integrated industrial milieu. So there are car plants on both sides of the border, and in between them, these great trucks haul parts from one plant to another, so that the assembly of vehicles can go on. So I just give you that image in this little poem. I should mention, though, that because it comes into the poem briefly, that Windsor is actually a geographic anomaly in Canada in that it's south of Detroit. So when you live in Windsor, you go north into the United States and south back to Canada, which is very odd. But since I'm talking about strangeness, it seemed to fit. So my little poem, which, as I say, steps away for a moment, is called "Why There Is No Calm Here." Day and night, the huge blue trucks of Chryslers and the others climb the great iron bridge from both directions, constantly pulling the sound across the river. Detroit, Windsor, Windsor, Detroit. Like the clouds headed south out of Michigan, the trucks and trailers travel high in the air between the cities. But the wheels and engines pulse at my ear while the clouds drift into Ontario in perfect silence. The other poem, the second of the long poems that make up Planet Mostly Sea, is set in a very different environment. It's set on the west coast of Vancouver Island. The poem is called Long Beach Suite. In those days, in the 70s, they allowed you to camp right on Long Beach, which I did for several days, and this poem arose out of that. When you were living on the beach 24/7, that sound of the ocean never left your ears. So this is the first poem in the sequence that makes up Long Beach Suite, and it's called The Washerwoman. Wind and the sound the surf makes, also the drumming of the surf on distant rocks, and the faint whisper at the edge of the foam moving in along the sand. On a day in late summer, kelp and seaweed left on the lines of the tide, or scattered across the beach in the afternoon light. The beach and the furious washerwoman throwing out pail after pail. The washerwoman. Thank you.